Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Before You Take the LSAT. I'm your host, Doreen, and today we are going to be talking to Mordy. Mordy, is it Mordy or Mordecai? What do you want me to call you?
Mordy for Prez, Mordecai, Mordy.
Okay.
It depends where I am. I have different names.
Okay, Mordy. Okay, so quick, really brief intro, and then Mordy for Prez. If you want to add anything to it, you're welcome to. But so Mordy attended one of the top 10 law schools in the country. He went to NYU Law. He then worked at a top 10 law firm, so Biglaw in the country. He worked at Gibson Dunn. Then he built, well, actually, before that, he built a startup in college that was valued at 1.5 million. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then in your free time, right, this is not your full-time gig. In your free time, you've also crafted a social media following with over 70 million views on TikTok and over 100K followers just on TikTok, but you're also on other platforms. So I guess my first question, well, welcome, first of all.
Thank you. That is a great intro. You know, I've never been introduced before. Usually people say, okay, why don't you introduce yourself? But that was very well said. I send that to my parents. It's great.
Thanks, I'm glad. Okay, so first question is, how do you balance it all and what drives you? I guess that's two questions, but how do you balance
Yeah,
it
two questions.
all? There you go.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Doreen for having me on her show. I've followed her page before you take the LSAT, and in a environment that there is a lot of gatekeeping and you'll have consultants want to charge you for every little thing. It's really nice to see someone like Doreen give out so much free content. So shout out to her. By the way, before the call, Doreen was texting me and she asked me what questions were off limits, and I said none. So gloves off. We're going deep here. So
Yes.
one question in terms of balancing it all. I don't think you should balance it all exactly. I
Okay.
think some weeks you're going to have weeks where you're really focused on your fitness and your health and you're going to bed early. And then you're going to have some weeks where work is just firing off all cylinders and there's certain opportunities that peeked its head out at certain times that you just have to jump on. So I think if you have a few things in your day that are constant, for example, every morning I'm going to make my bed. Every morning I'm going to bless up. If you follow my TikTok, I pray in the mornings.
I feel
Like
like,
there's certain things that I do that no matter what's happening, I'm going to do those things. So have staples in your day, and
mhm.
then take the opportunity as it comes because time goes fast and you have to jump at things when it peaks its head. So in terms of balance, I just try to do it all because hey, I'm single, I don't have a family yet, so this is the time to do it. And then in terms of drive and what motivates me,
Mhm.
I I've just always seen my grandparents, my parents work day in and day out. The person that I'm named after, Mordecai, my late great grandfather, he he came to America from Europe, and he couldn't get any jobs because he didn't speak English, and he also would not work on Sabbath, which is a religious observance for Jewish people. So he worked in a bakery for 15 hours a day. He walked an hour and a half each way. So I think if you're looking at your situation, just look at people that came before you and say, how was their life? How hard did they work? So perhaps maybe my role isn't too bad after all.
I think that's really important. Is there an element of gratitude that I'm hearing in there? I feel like that's kind of what,
Exactly, exactly. People think I'm such a, funny, real quick, Doreen. I was
yeah.
talking to a matchmaker the other day. She cold called me. A matchmaker cold called me. And she
Hmm.
goes, I was talking, and I'm always myself. I don't care who I'm talking to. I'm always going to be myself. And she goes,
Yeah.
I think a lot of girls, Mordecai, will be very turned off by your bombastic, overly confident attitude.
Whoa.
And I said, great.
I
I
love,
said not. I said not everyone's supposed to like me. So while
yeah.
she could have thought that perhaps I'm maybe overly confident, which I think everyone should be overly confident because that's what you need to accomplish anything great. I do have a sense of gratitude towards everyone around me, my friends, my family. Just getting up in the morning. Like you get up in the morning, enough of an excuse to do something good with your time.
Amen. Well, going back to your, it was your grandfather that you were talking about that inspired you, right?
Yeah,
And or
yeah,
great
yeah.
grand, your
Great
great,
grandfather. Yeah, never met him, but
you never met
his
him.
story. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that I really like about your story is your chutzpah, and I'm wondering if maybe you get a little bit of that from your great grandfather, or it's,
Yeah.
but hearing a little bit about your story and the way that you applied to law school, and
Yeah.
you were waitlisted for a lot of the law schools that you really wanted to go to. NYU Law was your top law school, partially because your mom went there, correct? So
Damn. Okay, Doreen. You really got it. Okay.
I come prepared. I don't want to
Yeah,
waste anybody's time, not the audience, not yours. But yeah, yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about the chutzpah, right? Like you
yeah,
had end of the story in your mind. You said, I am going to get into NYU Law, whatever it takes. I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Like, I'm already in. I think that was your mindset, right? You were like, I'm already in. They don't know it yet. I know it, right? So,
Exactly. And Doreen, by the way, you have a great smile, Doreen. So you should,
thank,
yeah,
thank you.
that probably helps you. So if having chutzpah,
Doesn't
you
hurt.
know, manifesting is another way people like to put it.
Yes.
I wanted to go, once I decided I was going to law school, I said I won't have it any other way besides for NYU Law School. My mom went there, and also a great role model for myself.
Yeah.
And every school waitlisted me, and I have no issue with saying that. Every school, even Fordham Law School waitlisted me. Cardozo initially waitlisted me. Penn, Columbia, NYU, all waitlist. And I said, okay, great. You know, sometimes the best position to be in is when you have nothing to lose. So I was
Amen.
in these places where I had nothing to lose. And I was doing videography before it was cool. Like before
Yes.
everyone was dancing and, you know, getting all these likes on TikTok, I was always into videography. So one thing I did for all the schools I was on a wait list, I made a video where
Hey.
I made a whole video to them talking about one of the charity pursuits I did while I was in college for Save a Child's Heart. That's another story. But we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for children from developing countries to get heart treatment. So I made a video discussing it, how we promoted the event, how we sold tickets, and who we're helping. And I sent to all the law schools. No answer. I was like, all right, you guys are playing hard to get. Then I got valedictorian. Then I got valedictorian of my class, and I spoke at the graduation. And I took the speech, I made it into snippets, added subtitles, added motivational music, and I sent that also to the schools. Now, another thing I did with NYU Law School is I showed up once a month. And I
Mm.
said, "Hey," and they're like, "Go away." And I was like, "All right, I'll be back." So I kept going, and they said to me, they said, "Listen, Mordy for Prez, if you don't have any questions, this is not an interview. You have to get out." I said, "Okay, it's fine. I'm just here to walk around." And I went once a month to NYU Law School until I was accepted. Could that work for everyone? I don't know, but if you have nothing to lose, this is the one thing I'll tell you about a wait list. It's an oxymoron, Doreen, because if you wait, you will
Yes.
never get off it.
Yes. You'll never get
You're
off of the
not supposed to
stage. Yeah.
anyway.
Amen. Well, I mean, I think one thing to just say for that is there's an art to it, right? I'm sure that you knew when you can kind of push a little bit and when you had to pull back, or else it
Yeah.
could get really, yeah, it could be a reason to not to get off the wait list in a negative way, right? Like and not be accepted. So
Yes, but law school admissions are so competitive nowadays.
yeah,
You have nothing to lose if you're on a wait list. And I really mean that. It's not how it used to be where, you know, 10, 15% of the wait list got an admittance letter. I think it's probably much less nowadays. There are more people than ever wanting to go to law school. This is the most competitive landscape to apply to law school in
mhm.
human history. I don't know if they had law schools in the times of the Aztecs, but in the last 50 years, this is by far the hardest time, which is, and I'm sure we'll get into it more when it comes to resume application. You need to go above and beyond if you want to get into a top school.
Why don't we just talk about that now? I mean, I know something that you've said in the past, like you want people to, that's the advice, right? Is to go above and beyond. And you've shared some of the things you've done, whether it's Save a Child's Heart or it was starting that, the startup that you did, and that was something that set you apart. What are some pieces of advice that you would share for people who are in that position?
Definitely, great question. So if you go to your law school advisor at your college and say, "How do I get into top school?" They'll say, "Your GPA and your LSAT, and you also should be president of accounting club and
Yeah.
play pickleball." Put that pickleball. I don't want anyone in my circle playing pickleball, but that's a side point. And my dad bought a pickleball set. Sorry to call him out. I said, please don't ask me to play pickleball. But anyway, they'll tell you be president of the clubs, and
Hmm.
everyone applying to a top law school has everything I just mentioned and so much more.
Yes.
They have the you need the good GPA, you need the good LSAT, you need the good resume, you need a good not cover letter, personal statement. You need all that, but you have to do something extraordinary. And that could be, I always say, first and foremost, volunteer service. It's something that's always been important to
Yeah.
me, is to give back in any way. And with the internet nowadays, you could start something in a day. if you want to do if there's an issue that you care about, you see what's happening in Ukraine, and you want to start a drive to raise money, so you make T-shirts and you go out to Washington Square Park and you sell them for $50 and you donate all the proceeds, and then you get written up in the news somewhere, and Doreen helping Ukraine with T-shirts. I mean, this sounds funny, but you could do this.
Yeah.
I could do that in a week. I could literally do that in a week. Get it screen printed, go sell it, and then reach out to a bunch of publicists through LinkedIn and say, hey, could you cover my story? And here you just have something really great on your resume that other people may not have.
Mm-hmm.
You should do it anyway because you want to be a good person. But the point of the matter is you need to say, what is everyone else doing? So I should do that and more.
Right. And it almost kind of goes back to what you were saying with the matchmaker, right? If someone thinks that what you're doing is slightly different and some people might not like it, well, better. Maybe that's a good thing. Right?
That was the weirdest call of my life with the matchmaker. It was so weird. I was like, how'd you get my number?
Yeah.
It was bizarre.
Yeah. So I think another thing I wanted to talk to you about is you went from going, like, you call yourself not such a great student, or you weren't, right?
Yeah, I really wasn't.
So you went from like 60 absences in your senior year, right? You were getting.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
I'm telling you, Mordy, I'm not here to play around. So so you had this background where you weren't necessarily like the top student, but in law school, when it's really hard to be a top student, especially at a top law school, you were a top student, right? And you killed it. So how do you go from having that background to becoming a top student at a top law school?
Listen, oh my gosh. So first of all, the ADD, ADHD, all these different combinations of letters, I never will pay attention to it. I've had teachers tell me certain times that, hey, when I was in high school, they called in my parents to tell them that, I have some sort of ADD and they should put me on something so I could focus. And my mom said, you got to do better teaching. And she walked out. Yeah, she said, you got to do better teaching. So, but when I was in high school, I had such an inability to sit that I actually stood in the back of the class and walked back and forth. My teachers let me do that. And I think what people fail to realize is your brain is like any other muscle. So when I was playing basketball in high school and I played in college, but I got no playing time, I sucked. But anyway, I was good in high school. Everyone's good in high school. So, you get on the basketball court and you're not going to be able to dunk on the first day. You won't be able to make free throws on the first day, but you practice and practice and practice. And I think people expect such academic excellence from themselves at the outset without sitting there suffering. If you're in the gym, if you're not suffering while doing the push-ups, you're not going to get a bigger chest. So similarly with your mind and your brain, I wasn't a good student in high school, and I was decent in college because I didn't care. It didn't matter. It's pretty easy just to get by nowadays. When it came to law school, I had no choice. I saw the students. I looked around and I said, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Cornell, these kids camp out in the library. And it was a necessity to buckle down. And when I first started, it was to sit for 30 minutes, Doreen, was painful. No. And I know a lot of your listeners that are watching, they feel the same thing. You grab for your phone, you'll look around, you'll get up. And I trained myself for it. 30 minutes, I'd sit, and then I'd walk around. And then the next day I did 40 minutes, and then I'd walk around. There are a few things that people should do. For example, your phone cannot be on you. There is no way you could sit down and focus and study if your phone is next to you. Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, messages, Facebook. No one uses Facebook. You get the point. So it's a slow development. It doesn't happen overnight. It was years where I said, okay, I'm not a good student now, but sit down and read a little longer today. And the next day I did a little bit longer. So for anyone that is struggling with their ability to focus, good. Everyone struggles with it. There is nothing wrong with you. There would be something wrong with you if you enjoyed it right away. So every day, just try to get a little better. Don't beat yourself up. You're going to have great days of studying, and then you're going to have bad days of studying. But I went from not being able to sit in the back of a classroom in high school to now when I was studying for the bar exam, I was sitting down for 5-6 hours in a row, no problem, and passing at 99 percentile. And it's not because I'm that book smart. I still wouldn't describe myself as that, but I built up over time a tolerance and an ability to retain information. So if you suck at studying, good, get better. You could get better.
Going back to what you said a little bit earlier, and I think that's great advice. I think it's really important. I think the phone piece, especially, like you said, you put your phone in the locker. That's the way to do it. Like you can't even have it in the same room as you. It's just too distracting.
Yep,
And
yep.
one thing you said, like you go in like a spot where no one could see you, like there was a crevice in the stairwell. I think for me, that's also something that would have worked really well because I am so social that I'll go to Starbucks, not know anybody, and end up talking to the person sitting
Yeah.
right next to me, and it's just like I
I can,
can't can't even help it. So I can see, depending on the like, it's good to know your own tendencies and find ways to mitigate around it.
yes, I agree.
Yeah, so you were saying earlier that you're a really confident person. So I'm curious if you ever had moments of imposter syndrome, because I know that that's really common for a lot of people who are in law school or in law. So curious how if that manifested for you in any way.
The whole first year. So
Okay,
I
so
got
from you. So let's hear it.
literally the whole first year. I mean, when I remember the first day I got in, all these other students were in. They got accepted a year before that. I got off the wait list just a few months before, and we
Yeah.
were sitting around a round table. And the first day in first year writing, and Professor Rachel went around and said, "Everyone, introduce yourself and tell us what school you went to."
Hmm.
He said, "Oh, my name is Rachel, and I went to Harvard. My name is Jack, and I went to Cornell. My name is Rebecca, and I went to Yale." And then I said, "My name is Mordy, and I went to Yeshiva University." And
Cool.
it's I love Yeshiva. It was a great time, but it's not Yale and it's not Harvard. So when I looked around the room, for those that don't know, law school classes operate on a curve. So there's only five A's that could go around. There's only 10 A minuses. It doesn't matter how good your exam is. If there are people that are better than you're going to get a worse grade. And I remember during looking around my class for a full semester and looking at each student thinking, could I do better than that student? And I literally went person by person. I said,
Oh.
no, 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 no. I swear I did this every class. I'm like, how
That's
the
not.
hell how am I gonna beat out these students? They're brilliant. When they just ask questions, it was like a novel. So it's no if you're in a situation that you are outmanned and outgunned, you're gonna feel it as if you don't belong. That's a great place to be. It's a great place to be uncomfortable. It's a great place to feel inadequate. That's not a bad feeling to have. So I could say for a full semester, the first semester for sure, I felt extremely inadequate. I was worried if I would fail. My brother was totally instrumental. We lived together, and he's like my best friend. And he went to Fordham Law School, so he was
Older?
telling me the whole. He's older, and he's just my best friend. And he would tell me the whole time. He's like, dude, don't worry, you're gonna do well. You're gonna do well. I said, how? These kids are geniuses. He goes, no, they're not that smart. You got this. You got this. So after my first semester, my grades came in, and they were good. I mean, they weren't top of the class. I mean, they were pretty good. So after that, I felt as if I belonged. But imposter syndrome is something that everyone feels, and it's good to be in a place where you are outmatched because you will grow from that.
I mean, I don't know if everyone has that mindset though, right? Like if you have a growth mindset, you can think of the positives, but can you share a little bit more about how you were thinking about it where imposter syndrome could be a good thing?
Yeah. So if people say the term "fake it till you make it,"
Hmm.
which I think is a fallacy in that you are not faking it. You are being true to yourself. You're believing in your abilities to say, I could compete at the same academic level as the Yale, Harvards, Cornells of the world. Maybe I haven't shown it to myself yet. Maybe I
Hmm.
haven't shown it to the world yet, but I know it's possible. So if you're in a place where everyone around you is seemingly better and smarter and more intelligent and more thorough, that's okay. That's
Hmm.
okay. Also, a lot of people will put a very brave front up.
Yeah, it's
For
true.
those people that come to class are like, I was up till 2 a.m. last night, and I did outlines and I did practice exams. That's not the person you have to worry about. You have to worry about the person in the back of the class that comes in a hoodie with the hat and just sits there like this. That's the person you got to worry about on exam day. So, that's with everything in life. You get into so many situations where you don't belong. When I was in college, I ran a nightlife app, and I
Lit.
was I was lit. That's your research is A1. I will always come on your podcast, and I was 18 years old. I was way off from the drinking age, and I was running events for 1,000 people a night. So you just have to put yourself in the situation and make it happen. And imposter syndrome, especially in law school, everyone. One thing that will really help you is keep in mind everyone feels the same way. Everyone is freaking out.
Yeah.
Everyone is stressed. Everyone is out of place. Some people show it. Some people don't.
Yeah, I think of it as like everyone's like a headless chicken. That's what I felt like. All the 1Ls were like headless chickens, trying to find out like what the other person's doing, but really it's the 2Ls and 3Ls that know what's going on. So that was one thing that I found was useful is like I wouldn't talk to 1Ls. I was just like, what do the 2Ls and 3Ls know? Let me talk to them.
Smart TAs are your best friends.
Yes, that's true, yes.
TAs, they know
But
everything.
Morty, another thing, like what you just said, I think an important piece of it is also like all of that is true, but also you were also really willing to work hard. So like you talked about how like you were at the library like from whatever, I'm assuming early in the day until like you were the last one to leave. And even if you didn't have anything to study for at the end of the day, it was like, I'm still gonna be the last person here. So if I'm going to sit here and watch a show, then I'll sit here and watch a show. But I think that that's really powerful, right? Like sometimes it's just the act of like showing up and being there and telling yourself, I'm going to do this and I'll do whatever it takes, even if I am not necessarily like, I don't have anything else to study, but I told myself I'll be the last one, and it still means something to be the last one. So I think it's really important that at the end of the day, a lot of things you're saying, like it's a lot of it is like mindset, but you also had the work ethic that worked with your mindset to go together and make it a reality.
Definitely. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, so I think one thing to slightly veer off on a different course, I'm curious if you set any intentions or goals for 2023, whether it's about law or beyond.
Yeah, I have a few. I think I would really like to learn Krav Maga,
Okay,
self-defense.
nice.
That's
Yeah.
something I'm trying. I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm also working on a really cool startup. I can't talk about it yet, but it is some sort of board game, and that's what I do on Sundays. And another thing I really want to get more involved in is charity work this year because over the last year and a half, I think I've been really and rightfully so selfish in my endeavors and what I want to accomplish. And this year, I really want to use a platform that I built to shed light on certain places. So, for example, one charity that I know I'm going all in this this year is Shabbat Angels.
Nice.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
It was it started by my friend from college, Shauna Shariki. She actually hated me in college, but that's okay. We're past it. And anyway, so they deliver warm meals to Holocaust survivors before Shabbat. That's Friday night, and they also sit with them and sing and laugh and keep them company. So it's more than just food; it's also a light. So it's something that's beautiful to me. I already did a delivery. I want to do more. So I would say those are two points of emphasis for 2023.
Do you consciously think about like these are the different areas of my life that I want to focus on and like maybe right now I'll work on this bucket and this bucket or like how do you think about it? Like are you thinking about numbers like this is how much I want to accomplish or this is what I want to do or this is how I want to spend my time?
Yeah, it's every second, honestly. My mind never shuts off, and
Yeah.
I can't help it. That's just, I guess, who I am. I mean, I'm thinking at every single moment about something I want to do this week. Like when Sunday night hits, my whole week is planned. Like
That's
like
wow.
every moment, it's in my like I write it down. I have it in my head where I'm gonna be every single day, every night. When I'm what days I'm gonna be filming, what days I'm gonna be working on other projects. I work in as an in-house counsel at a real estate development company, so that takes up 90% of my day. People think I
Yeah.
don't work because I post on social media,
But you
but but
balance it well.
but
Yeah.
I take my job extremely seriously because at the end of the day, TikTok could disappear, and then what are you left with? So I think when it comes to ideas and your goals, you have to actually obsess over it.
Yeah.
Like if you're going against me on a goal or a job position, I'm gonna get it just because I can't stop thinking about it. I go to bed thinking about how I'm gonna get it. I want to get this job. Okay, I'm gonna make a pitch deck. I'm gonna contact them on LinkedIn. I'm gonna show up to their office. How else do I get it? How's my resume? I mean, this stuff it consumes me and it's actually exhausting. And I wish I could shut it off sometimes, which is why I started meditating. Supposedly that helps. But when it comes to your goals and what you want to do, it's really important to just obsess over where you're going.
Okay, so
Yeah.
speaking of, so you brought up working in-house counsel in a real estate law firm. So before that, you were working in Biglaw in real estate.
Yeah, it
Can you,
was.
I mean, I've seen your TikToks. You've talked about pros and cons. I'm curious if you could tell me a little bit more and go a little bit more in depth about like
Yeah.
before you even started law school, right? Because a lot of people who watch this or listen to this are going to be pre-law. What are some things that would have been nice to know about big law? Because that's the dream for a lot of people. They want to go to a top law school because they want to go into big law. So
Yeah.
what would have been helpful for you to have known before you even started in that world?
Yeah, that's a great question about Biglaw. I don't. when it comes to Biglaw and Gibson Dunn, ultimately, I'm thankful that they gave me a chance. And anytime anyone bets on you in this world and gives you an opportunity, you have to be abundantly thankful and never turn your back. I think it was a really hard time to enter any job because it
I
was during COVID,
yes.
everyone was remote. And when you graduate from law school, maybe you know how to read Supreme Court cases and you know how to brief and you know how to drink alcohol, but you surely don't know how to be a transactional attorney. And that's why the mentorship really comes into play. So I, what I see on social media is people taking advice and life lessons from people above them and saying, "Oh, this person didn't like Big Law, so I'm not gonna like Big Law." I really
Yeah.
want to avoid that because we're all very different and timing really matters as well. So because Big Law didn't work for me, coming into the time where it was COVID and everyone was remote and there was no events and no dinners and no mentoring and no training and no in-office
Yeah.
interaction, if I sit on this podcast, Doreen, and say, Big Law sucks,
Hmm.
going to ruin that opportunity for someone that's
Yeah.
behind me that
Yeah.
will have a different experience because any job starting during that the pandemic was really hard. So it was remote. Coworkers were really nice. The hours were immense. It was like 15 hours a day. It was very demanding. And I really think I missed out not being in the office, frankly. And I think for anyone that is looking for a job, don't push yourself out of your comfort zone and don't work remotely. Don't, it's not the future. Every single big company is calling back their employees. If during the good times, yeah, you could tell your employer, I'm not coming in, I'm working remotely. But when the times get rough, as you see now, if you were working remotely at JP Morgan, Facebook, Instagram, you're gone now. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I don't mean to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead.
no, no, go ahead. No, no, please.
I think there's like multiple aspects to that. I think one is just looking at you and like your background, a lot of I can tell like right obviously a big part for you is being social and you
Yeah,
really would have taken advantage of being in the office. You would have talked to people, learned from people. Like that's probably one of the best ways for you to learn is just talking to people and being around people. So I think especially for you and also for me, like I was also remote for most of it and like I wish I could be in an
really.
office setting. Yeah, I wish I could have been in an office setting and like I would have taken advantage of talking to my coworkers and I did. Like I would still make time for us to like grab lunch or if there was ever an event I would go. But I feel you. Like I also think it depends on the person's personality. Like you would have taken advantage of it probably at the top 5 percentile of anybody who would take advantage of going into the office, right? You would have made those little moments, the elevator, the lunch,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
seeing, right? So for you especially, so I think that's one thing to kind of just distinguish. But I do agree with you that it's better to be in an office because of those interactions, especially if it's someone like you. But
Yeah.
I also want to push you a little bit more. What else do you think people should know before they start law school? Because I think some of the things you're sharing is
About Big Law, or
yeah, yeah, about Biglaw.
what you should know about Big Law is the firm matters and not the ranking.
Okay.
You know, people could get very caught up in top 10. I mean, I'm that way. I picked out a list of the top 5 real estate groups in the country, and I said these are my top 5.
Yeah.
I think a really important thing for you, or meaning you being, pre-law or in law school, is you must find a place that loves you and that wants to train you and wants to make you into a great attorney. Even if that means maybe the office is not on Fifth Avenue with the view of the Hudson River, and maybe that means a $15,000 less pay. If you find a place that they really are investing in you and they
Yeah.
care about making you into a great attorney, that's going to pay off dividends. Also, you should know about Big Law is there's a lot you could do, and this is something that you specialize in. Aside for Big Law, I mean,
Yeah.
what is Big Law even? Like, no one even knows what it is. What is Big Law? Doreen, what is Big Law? I think I understand it, but I don't really understand it. It's basically just describes the biggest law firms in the country in the major cities with
Yeah.
multiple offices that all pay the same. That's Big Law. So what? So there's so many boutique shops. There are startups. You could do consulting. You could do finance. You could truly do anything. So people that are interested in going to law school for Big Law, good, go to Big Law. If you go stay there for 2 or 3 years, there is so many other avenues that you could pursue after that.
Yeah, it's funny actually. One of my professors said was giving that same advice, and he said even if you spend 6 to 8 months in a big law firm, it's still really good training, and it's good to have it on your resume.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw that from the like recruiting side, right? Like some companies were looking for people to have Biglaw on their resume, even if it was for a shorter period of time. Like it made a difference to have that on your resume. But
Wow.
again, going back to what you said, you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So even if you didn't have that experience, like people have all different types of backgrounds. So
Yeah.
I want to get into what you're doing now. So in-house counsel. You've talked before about like what you think, what draws you to real estate in the first place, right? There's so many different elements of it. So like there's accounting, right? And you have a background in accounting that's helpful. There's the creative element. So I want to hear a little bit about what, how you perceive, I guess, real estate law and why people might be drawn to it or good at it.
You keep dropping these small little
I got to
facts
do
on my life. I'm having so much fun. I'm just having so much fun. What I love most about real estate law is the tangibility aspect. It's that you
Yeah.
could work on a financing, or could work on a lease, or you
Yeah.
could work on a purchase and sale agreement, and then actually go to the property itself.
Hmm.
That aspect I really love. You could touch and feel your work in a way. I also love things aside for legal work. So I truly love interior design. I love marketing. I love architecture. These are things that I've done in the past. I'm not a professional in any realm, but working in real estate law, I can interact with other teams very often. So I'm working very often with the finance team, because when they're working on a term sheet for a loan, I have to be familiar, because when the loan agreements come in, that's on my plate. But also be able to see other projects. When you work in a business, instead of a law firm, it's a pretty small family. So for example, I led the renovation of a really small lobby space in one of our offices. So it's a small project, but I had the best time. We redid the whole thing. We redid the elevators, the floors. I'm learning about different types of tiles and woods and lighting. I researched how many watts should a light bulb have in a lobby. So I love the diversity of the work there. And I think anyone that is looking for a job that has a lot of creativity in law, I think real estate, you have to be extremely creative, because every deal is different. You're dealing with real estate developers who have high demands, and it's high heat, and it's in a way a drama sometimes. So the job for me has been unbelievable. I think Gibson and being in Biglaw definitely prepared me in some ways. I would say, being available, putting work first, in a big law firm, they could contact you at midnight and say, "Let's go," and you got to be at your computer. So I'm freaking loving this new position.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear
Yeah,
that, 'cause it's hard to find something that you truly enjoy. Another thing I'm curious about is, so now that you've built this following and now that you're a lawyer, you've been at Big Law, you're an in-house counsel, you've had positions where you get to speak at schools. And I'm really curious, like, what kinds of things you share with the audience and what your goal is when you speak at schools.
definitely. So I love speaking at schools. And
Hmm.
the reason is, when I was in college or high school, and we'd have speakers that were 50 years old with families, they've been in the business for 30 years, they're
Hmm.
giving me advice, but what could they tell me? They're so far ahead, I can't even
Right.
relate. I like to listen to people that I can relate to. So I am just a few years ahead from the students that I go to speak to, just a few. And I was in their position. I was truly nowhere in college. I was on the basketball team for a year. That flaked out. And then I worked on a startup, and then that kind of was a little shaky. So, I could speak to them and say, "Here's what I did. Do the same thing." And I am a fan of hot takes. I'm going to tell you
Let's hear
how I feel, what I'm thinking. So one of the things I say, they always ask me, "How do study tips? How do I study well?"
it. Mhm.
So I say, by show of hands, who here smokes weed? Who here smokes weed? And apparently this is controversial. I posted this on my Instagram, and someone said, "Well, you don't know how it feels, and you."
Don't take it personally.
And it's also, it is people that are our age. I'm 26. I'm young,
Yeah.
but there's no empathy to this 15-year-olds that are alone. They went through a really weird time. They have their cell phones. They have TikTok. They have distractions all over the place. Just because you are solid and you have a good career because you're 25 and then you started smoking, doesn't mean you could have done it when you were 15, 16 years old. I was on a podcast called the Teen Finance Pod, talking to these students in high school. 50 to 60% of their class smokes weed. I don't need to read any studies to tell you that weed destroys productivity, weed destroys ambition, weed destroys success. And I don't care if I sound like an old head, or I don't care if people say, "Oh, you're so close minded. How could you say that?" If you are smoking weed and I'm not smoking weed, I'm gonna win.
Okay, Morty, I'm gonna
College.
push back. Can I push back?
Yes.
Well, and not about weed actually, but couldn't you say something similar for drinking alcohol?
No, I don't think it's the same. And I yet that's the first thing people say. And the reason being is
Yeah.
alcohol, it, from what I see and from what I feel, because
Mhm.
of course I partied in college and I still go out. I partied in college. That sounds so um
Well,
is
I mean, you had an app literally for partying, so it
no
makes
no
sense.
I went out. I went out.
Yeah.
You know, drinking alcohol punishes you.
Yeah.
So if you go out, goes out and has 5, 10 shots of tequila, they wake up the next morning, they feel like crap. They feel terrible. They go, and you know the famous saying, "I'm never drinking again. I'm never. Oh my God, I feel terrible."
Yeah.
You could. I see students waking up smoking weed, going to lunch breaks smoking weed, coming home for dinner and smoking weed, and they
Yeah.
feel great the next morning, and they continue to do it. So, just talking about the addictive effects of weed compared to alcohol. And I'm not saying you should drink alcohol, and I'm not saying you should smoke weed. People say, but alcohol is bad for you. I never told you to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, and
Curious why you yeah.
I've seen many friends of mine lose their careers because they got hooked on weed. I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
never seen it with alcohol ever. So I'm speaking based on personal experience. So that's one thing I tell students. Another thing is I tell them that being in college, you will never have more time than you have now. And nothing matters and no one cares about your failures. So it's a tremendous opportunity to just try things. If it fails, you don't have any family to feed, no one's counting on you. College is the time to just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
Try every idea. Try that startup. Start a clothing brand. Start an Instagram page. Start a YouTube account. You do something because looking back, you never want to say, I had all that time in college and I didn't take advantage. So that's another thing I tell them is seize the moment right now.
Really good advice. And I will say for the record, I don't smoke weed, so I'm with you. I agree with you. I don't say it to anyone. I wouldn't give that advice. But not that I don't agree with it, but I do. Okay,
We're all
anyways.
different people. We're all different people. I think someone's got to say it, and no one's going to say it. Cause,
Yeah. Yeah, I think
yeah,
I would just be afraid to offend too many people. That would be my honest reason why. Anyways,
yeah.
yeah, no, go ahead.
No, when I was younger, do you know Dare? Do you remember Dare?
Yeah.
There was this school program that would come and say, "Don't do drugs." And now, if I say it 10 years
Yeah.
later, I'm a pariah. It's insane. Just because, just because society has gone in a certain direction doesn't mean that the
Yes.
practices of that society are true and virtuous. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's good. Just because it's widely used doesn't mean it's healthy and productive.
Okay, there's so much there, and they were actually my questions that I wanted to ask you about, but there's so much there that I
Yeah.
want to follow up on. So one other thing that you were talking about is you were saying like fail in college, people are not really paying attention. I agree with you. Like you should
Yeah.
explore, try different things. And one thing that you mentioned is like you said the best education you ever had was making that startup, which is wild, right? For if you look at it just like
Yeah.
you went to a top law school, spent all that money on that education, but at the end of the day, what really taught you the most was making the startup. And I actually, to me, that makes perfect sense, actually, because you're testing the market, like it's real feedback. There's so much that you learn being hands-on. So I want you to share a little bit about why you think everyone should start a startup at some point in their life, or like what that looked like, that education was the best education you had out of everything you've done.
Yeah, I think you should do a startup, even if it's a laundry business or and
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be an app. The reason why a startup is such a fantastic learning experience is because no one is telling you what to do and you have to figure it out with minimal resources. We
Yeah.
had absolutely no money. We had no
Mhm.
direction. It's a nightlife app called Lit. And what Lit did is on a map, it showed you the hottest venues in your area based off real-time user feedback. So our algorithms were taking the rating at Little Sisters nightclub from the 100 people that were there and showing it on the party stats screen. So we started the app. I had no background in tech, in law, in marketing, in fundraising, and we had no money, zero. I mean, there was really, I had a little bit to start, but then I had to figure out how to raise money, how to create a pitch deck, how to create an app, how to market an app, how to manage a team. We had a team of 8 people, including my co-founder, who's still one of my best friends to this date. We had 100 campus ambassadors. How do you incorporate the company? How do you trademark the name? How do you draft investors documents? How do you write the terms and conditions? How do you get a lot of users with minimal funds? how do you convince someone that you're a good businessman and that they should sign up with your app? Because we went to a lot of nightlife venues to partner with us. How do you get the chutzpah? I went door to door. There was one time we wanted to get into this in Baltimore. Have you ever been to Baltimore? There's that big, beautiful area on the water. They
I
have
haven't.
there's a
But okay.
hospitality company that is housed there, and we couldn't get a meeting. So we showed up. I looked on Google for someone in the marketing department, and I went to the security. I said, "Oh, I have a meeting with Linda," and they said, "Okay." Took our IDs, went up in the elevator. I'm sitting there with my friend Nick Capizoli. I have a video. I'll send it to you of us in the elevator, and we're like, "What are we gonna do when we get up?" They came to us. They said, "Who are you guys?" I said, "Linda, I don't have a meeting. I lied, but I need 5 minutes of your time. I need." And she goes, "Okay." And I pitched her the app. She loved the idea. We ended up working together. So when you're working at a startup, your back is against the wall at all times. And as we did, throwing it back to being in law school and being very outmanned in terms of intelligence and being around such smart students, when you have a startup, you are always at square one. You always have your back against the wall. You never know what's flying, and you just have to figure it out. And it's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about goals already, but one of yours is Morty for Prez, right? Which
Yeah.
is probably, I'm imagining quite a few years out from now.
Mhm.
What would success look like for you in the next, like, what do you envision for yourself before then, before you even get to Morty for Prez?
I mean, when I run for president?
No, before you even get to that point, like, so that's one success marker for you is like running for Morty for Prez, right? And having that
Yeah.
as part of your story. But when you think about your future and how that would look like for you and you'd be happy and you feel like you've been successful, what would that look like maybe like 5 or 10 years out?
Yeah, I would actually urge people not to think like that. And here's why.
Yeah,
Because you have enough on your plate
right.
today. If you look at the week up ahead, it's probably pretty hard. If you look in the next month, I mean, there is so much that you need to accomplish in that month. Now you're talking years. If I go ahead during, I go, well, in 5 years, I want to have a beautiful family. I want to have a big house. I want to have a car. I want to be a CEO of a company. And then all I could tell you is I'm going to run for president one day. Besides, besides that, I have too much happening right now to think
Yeah.
in
You
that
want to be,
way. And I think the here and now is so important. And don't
yes.
why put pressure on yourself to say I want to be there in 5 or 10 years. You want to be there now. I want to be there now. I want to be a great businessman right now. I want to have 10 million followers right now. I want to
Yep.
have a successful startup right now. Saying I want a great family right now. So it's like I want it now. So it'll take time. But saying where are you going to be in 5 or 10 years, that's
Yeah.
putting too much pressure on someone.
It is a lot of pressure. I think one way of thinking about it that could be helpful is like you were saying, down the line, I'm eventually going to have a family or like I'm not going to be single and then I have to worry about other people.
Maybe.
Right.
Hopefully my mom doesn't watch it. She'll be like, he needs to be married now.
No, but if you think about it like that, then you're going to say, well, every Jewish mom is going to say that, right? So,
True. She's
so
amazing though. She's amazing. Yeah. Nothing. Shout out to
yeah.
my mom.
So I mean, it could be helpful in terms of thinking like, okay, if that's something that I'm thinking about for the future, let me just take advantage of my time now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, talking about your mom, and we can start wrapping up. I don't think there's that many questions that I had left, but
Yeah.
uh, speaking about your mom, what's the best advice she's given you?
I mean, she's one of the most successful women I know. She's a true feminist through and through. She ran her own law firm practice while she was raising us. She was there at all times and also kicking ass in business. So, and I think the best advice my mom has ever given me, and she gives me advice every day of my life. I mean, I go to her and ask her for advice on everything because she's a true genius and she has every right answer. She always tells me that, Morty, at the end of the day, all you have are your achievements, your degree, what you accomplished in your life, what you created. Everything else, experiences are great. Nights out are a lot of fun, but what are you really left with? And I think when she instilled that in me from a young age, I said to myself that I need to make sure that I achieve tangible things along the way because at the end of the day, that's what I'm left with. That's what really does define you is what did you accomplish while you had the ability to accomplish things. So that advice really, really always sticks with me. You have to better yourself every day. And that she was always telling me, every little thing. Your posture is not good, your grades, whatever. She was always very open, and I think she would always say you have to improve every day in something. And then my dad is a whole nother a set of lessons. He's more of
Yeah.
yeah, he's more of a hard charger, and he just does. There's nothing that could deter him, and I think taking lessons from those two, and you could take. It could be anyone watching. It could be your parents could give you great lessons, or it could be someone on TikTok, or find someone that really speaks to you and could motivate you, and someone to emulate. Mentors are really accessible. You can message them on LinkedIn and say, "Hi, I don't have anyone. Could you mind mentoring me?" You'd be surprised. I mean, I mentor during
Yeah.
hundreds of students a year. Seriously, I get on phone calls with people I've
Mhm.
never met and I'll never meet before because it's important to me. And you'll find many people like that. So that's, I would say, the lessons for that I've had over the years. And if you have good people around you, make sure you listen and you learn.
Yeah, it sounds like you're also really family oriented and learning
Yeah,
lessons from the people around you, and you look up to Are you the youngest in your family?
yeah, I am. I am.
So, and
Yeah.
so both siblings are lawyers. Your mom's a lawyer. Is your dad also a lawyer?
No, he got left out. He got left out. He got left out.
He's the
um,
businessman of the family. Is he the businessman of the family?
yeah. He's yeah. He knows more than every lawyer. I don't know. He
That's
didn't
what
go to law
happens.
school.
That's what
Yeah,
happens. Businessman, like you have to learn the law. I feel like there's no way around it.
exactly, exactly.
Okay, well, I think if there's anything I want people to take away from this, and I'm happy to hear also from you, but if there's anything I want people to take away from this, like a lot of my brand is like, look, it's not easy because a lot of people don't share the harder parts, right? Like part of my story is I started with the 148, ended up with the 174. My parents are immigrants, like
Wow.
first generation, no lawyers in the family, like all of these things that I had to figure out along the way on my own. So if I can do it, right, with a lot of humility, you can do it too, right? Like, or like,
Yeah.
being so. And I think part of your story of like, yeah, like I didn't start out as a student that this came naturally to. Like I had to work really hard. And you can tell that you really do have the work ethic, the mindset, the motivation, the drive. Like you worked really, really hard at this to get to where you are now. And I think you've mentioned before, like when people call you a content creator, like it's kind of like, no, no, no. I worked so hard to don't call me like this is what I do on my free time. I make extra
Yeah.
money and it's decent, but like this is not what I'm doing
Yeah.
full time. So that's one thing I hope people take away from this conversation is like if we can do it and both of us had our other different struggles and we're being honest and transparent about it, then I hope people realize like okay, if you put in if you find a way to make it work for you, like there's a way, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you hope people take away or any final thoughts you want to share with a lot of the students or a lot of people listening are pre-law, so anything you want to share with
Wow.
that?
Well, first I would say this is so fun, Doreen, and you're a fabulous interviewer, and I know you're gonna take before the LSAT. What'd you say?
You're easy to interview.
Yeah. I think you're gonna take before the LSAT to new heights, and if a big news company comes across you, I bet one of them will pick you up one day. I'm just manifesting that. So this has been so fun.
Thank
In
you.
terms of a takeaway, I would say for any young person, I get it. This is the hardest time to focus and really to sit down and study. There's so many distractions. They're throwing artificial intelligence your way and saying you're going to be replaced. Phones, TikTok, social media. So I get it. This is as hard as it gets, which is the reality, and you can't fight reality. So what I would say is, as hard as it may be, you could differentiate yourself that much more. So every single day, just focus on one thing to improve on. Don't think so largely, I need to get to Harvard today. Take one step at a time. Be very proud of yourself every single day and look
Yes.
in the mirror and say, I'm the freaking best. Because
Yes.
confidence will never hurt you. Confidence, it is a lost art. I didn't say cockiness because
Mm.
cockiness is you don't treat people the way you want to be treated. Always treat people well. But when you look in the mirror and say, I am capable of literally anything, and you may fail a lot. 9 times out of 10, when I work on something, I fail miserably. But here's the good news, Doreen. No one knows about those failures. They
Mm.
see, oh, we got to NYU Law School. I'm glad you didn't see what happened on the other 9 schools, but I got into NYU. So fail. If you get rejected, that's a good thing. That means you're shooting above your pay grade.
Mhm.
Work every single day. and you have to be your biggest cheerleader every step of the way if you want to accomplish something great. So Doreen, it's been such a pleasure to be with you. We
Thank
have to
you.
talk offline because you're really cool, and I want to be friends now. So so anyway, so
Doing this. And really, like, I really appreciate you being open and honest and sharing the challenges along the way. And I've said this already a few times, but really your work ethic, your mindset, like all of those things, I don't think people realize like what you're doing in terms of like you're working full time, right? As in-house counsel, you're also building your board game, and then you're also doing this content creation. It's so easy for people to pick at little things and like criticize, but I know it takes a lot to do all of those things that you're doing all at the same time, and you're also, there's just so many great things. So, and you're also hoping
so
to do a
nice.
little bit more like volunteering and things like that. So it's
A lot of volunteer. Thank you so much. And that just reminds me, Doreen was looking at my TikToks and she goes, I see you get a lot of bad comments. Ugh. Doesn't that hurt you? And I was like, yeah, I guess I do. I guess I do. And I think when you get to a point in life where nothing other people say matters, meaning you shouldn't act a fool and just say nothing matters because certain people's opinions matter. Your parents, maybe your teachers, your boss, their opinion matters. But once you could say, I'm going to do something because that's what I want to do, that's what I'm good at, it doesn't matter how people look at me. When I started TikTok, people thought I was a freak. They're like, you're videoing yourself and you're putting it up on the internet. And now I'm getting invited to be on these great podcasts and speak at schools and getting flown out to Switzerland for conferences. So start somewhere. You're going to look silly. That's okay. Just go ahead and do it. So Doreen, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you do with before you take the LSAT. I'll see you on like CBS News, like on Good Morning America. And this has been so fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and sharing.